Okay. I'm hoping everybody can see the screen. We are going to get started. Uh, Thank you, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you're all joining from. I hope everybody's having a pleasant day. So welcome again to the Credify's Background Screening 101 webinars. It's a webinar, educational webinar we host every couple of months on different topics. And this month, I think we have a special. It's really truly special because it's different and unique. People are very aware about, the traditional background screening, which has been done for decades, which is, criminal, employment, educational. But as the world moves to becoming more social, at least online social, and people are sharing a lot of information, there is a new screening which people are looking at, and that's called social media screening. So I'd love to, we are presenting this on social media screening, which is happening more today, perhaps will be one of the dominant screening things in the future, especially as certain regulations kick in, which may fit some of the criminal or other screenings, or may have more limitations on what you can do, and so on and so forth. So we are doing this in our partnership with Ferretly. And I'm joined here with, like to welcome Jamie Francos. She is the Vice President at Ferretly, and I'll let her introduce herself. I don't think I can do justice to her glorious background and experience. And I am Naveen. I'm the founder and CEO for Credify. So Jamie, how about a quick introduction?
You kind of set me up on a pedestal there, didn't you?
Oh,
Jamie Francos, I'm with Ferretly. I have been with Ferretly since day one. I've kind of taken on a couple different hats at the company as we've grown and scaled. But where we really went to market with our strategy was with other background screening companies. So we currently right now, we have about 70% of our business is other CRAs as well as end user accounts. So my role right now at Ferretly is to really foster our relationships and our partnerships with our background screening companies, as well as other resellers and partners in the industry as well. So I'm happy to be here today. Thanks for letting me maybe share a little bit of knowledge about social media screening.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie, for that intro. I think the people who have joined and the others who will be, hopefully will be joining as we continue.
Did he freeze up on us? Am I frozen or is it, or,
No, I think Naveen froze.
okay, I was like, did I do something wrong? Did I break it already? Uh-oh, did we lose them all together?
He's just trying to join back. Sorry about that.
We love technology and we hate technology, right? Like we all need
Yeah.
it, but it's not always fun. Does anybody have any questions maybe while we're waiting, or any questions in general about social media screening that maybe I can answer while we're kind of in limbo right now? Happy to kind of do off the cuff type questions if you want. No, nobody?
Hey, this is Andy. I'll ask a question for you.
Andy? Sure.
I always look at everything with the international lens. What's the current state on social media outside of the US in terms of capability of it? Is it still
Capabilities.
English only? Is it getting
Yep,
into
so
other
we are
countries?
definitely, we're definitely a global company. So we do social media background checks for all over companies all over the world. There are different regulations for different countries, of course, but we follow, of course, whatever wherever the company originates. Most people are still doing social media checks. If they are a global company, they're not just doing it nuclear to their individual country. But as long as they have social media accounts, whether it's individuals or organizations, if they're running them on maybe partnerships or other competitive analysis, we can do social media background checks. We do support about 80+ languages within our platform. Our reports currently are delivered in English, but we do have it in the roadmap that our reports will be delivered probably by end of Q4, beginning of Q1 in French, Spanish, or Portuguese as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
In the US, obviously, we follow FCRA. Most Canadian companies are following FCRA as well. I'm sure, Andy, as you know, once you get out of the US, it's more about EEOC and other guidelines within those individual countries. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. I said I'm here to learn, so that was good information for me. I didn't know it expanded that far already. So thanks.
Yep. And we also have the ability within the platform to translate posts. So if you know that the subject that you're going to be running primarily post in whatever their native language is, then you can, or we can, translate those posts as well back to English. We allow customizations within our settings in terms of keyword lists. We have our own set of classifiers that our AI is looking for, but we also allow for, hopefully you guys can hear me while he's doing this. We allow for specific keywords. So if you do have specific keywords that your customers are looking for, those are exact match. So we can add those into settings as well.
Okay, cool.
Yep. I can't tell, is Naveen presenting or?
Naveen's presenting.
Okay.
Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. My apologies. I have no idea. The internet just suddenly crashed on me. And it, as you would imagine, Murphy's Law, it happens when you've tested everything, checked everything, but then when you go live. I don't want to compare this to President Trump's Twitter disaster, but I would say this would rank up there, except, I don't want to be associated with that. But anyway.
I don't know if we're going to go viral though, so there's that. But
exactly, I hope not, and especially when we're talking about social media. So, all right. So I think we dropped somewhere. Maybe when we were looking at the stats, and you were talking something. So maybe we can pick it up from here and keep going.
Sure. Yeah, I think we were just starting from the beginning. I was just answering some questions, just to kind of in this nuisance of time. But these are some just quick social media stats. There's about 4.9 billion social media users worldwide, which is why social media screening is becoming more and more relevant to your vetting process. And the average US person has about 7 social media accounts. Ferretly does do monitoring of the 7 major platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, X, I always want to call it Twitter still, LinkedIn, TikTok, Reddit, and Pinterest. And then we do web and news. So we are covering the major social media platforms. And then the average is spending about 2 hours, about 2.5 hours on social media daily, which I think my kids could probably beat that by ×5.
Yeah, no, you said it, you couldn't have put it better. I think the 2 hours, 24 minutes is probably on the low side. Most people are averaging 4 to 5 hours, and the kids are probably averaging more like 15, 20 hours per week, at least, 5, 6 hours per day. One of the, key numbers is 4.9 billion. I was in a meeting, a few years ago with Nikesh Arora, who used to be one of the presidents at Google then, and he was saying that in just a matter of few years, I think the population was 2 billion, 2.5 billion online, and he said it will practically double or be more. So roughly about 3/4 of or 2/3 of the population planets is online, and it's the largest country, if you will. So you have to look at it not from a perspective of the number of people or the users, but almost like a big, huge nation or the planet online. So, all right, so
yeah,
just moving.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to say the reality is that more and more people are going to social media platforms, even for their news source, which whether you disagree or agree with that or not, they're using social media as more than just kind of posting online pictures about their kids playing soccer over the weekend. So you're finding that social media platforms in general are becoming, or not becoming, I think they have become, they're a source of what everybody is using on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, would it be fair to say, Jamie, that when we talk about screening, the reason for that is most people don't know the digital footprint is forever. It could be dangerous if people are not aware of what's happening, what things are being posted, what information is being shared. So probably a good segue into kind of talk about what is social media screening.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear in general, or has been in the past, in terms of social media screening and feeling like you're kind of prying into someone's personal life. But what people forget to understand is that if you have made your settings public, then those are public posts that are visible to anybody. Anybody can go out to Facebook and search Jamie Franco's and see what I'm posting. So social media screening really, if you think about it, the easiest way in my mind to describe it is, it's a little bit different, obviously, than a criminal background check or driving. It's not black and white, but it really is assessing someone's character and are they a good fit for the culture of my organization as to what they're posting on social media. Is there going to be potential red flags that we would not have found probably on a criminal background check or a driving or a drug, etc. So.
Yeah. I think it's important to highlight that the information is based on the public posts, if you will. And so,
For FCRA purposes, we only look at public posts. We're never looking at private accounts. We're never asking anybody for their username or their password. Some states in the United States have started asking people for passwords and passing regulations based on that. New Jersey just passed it, for example. And really where that's pertaining, or where you're seeing that, if you have any customers that fall into this kind of vertical, is more for public sector law enforcement. So being able to ask somebody for their password and kind of look at that, it's not recommended, obviously, from an FCRA standpoint.
Yeah. No, and I think it'd be fair to say, unfortunately, a lot of people are not aware, don't always turn on the privacy settings. And so a lot of information is available out there. And I think one of the other thing is, either which way you look at it, password or not, this is something which we offer to the clients. But then I think, there is somebody always watching on what is being posted. So passwords or not, privacy setting or not, and there have been so many congressional hearings about it. And as you just mentioned, that New Jersey changed that. So that was good. I think it's important to maybe understand why, are people looking to do this, or why did Ferretly get into this, or, there are other perhaps vendors. What's the value you provide, or what's the value for the client?
So I think in terms of organizations, what they're really starting to understand is that what people are posting are an extension of their brand and really represent what that company or what that potential employee is representing on their behalf, especially if their accounts are public. I mean, you've seen so many things just in the last 4 years since COVID happened, of people posting things, even if they may have their company, logo on their t-shirt, those types of things. So brand reputation is huge. We're seeing a lot of people also using social media influencers to promote their company, promote their products, promote something that they're trying to be on a consumer level. So brand reputation has been huge in terms of what does social media look like on those individual subjects. We talked a little bit about culture fit in the previous slide, but I think, again, what you're finding is what people are posting on social media is a bit more subjective than what, you would get from a drug test or a criminal background check. Those are pretty black and white. You did a crime or you didn't. Versus cultural fit is, what does your organization deem as to be risk? What do you consider to be risk? And that could be very different for me versus you. And that's okay. And are these individuals that you're potentially going to be bringing on board or your current workforce, does that fit the environment that you were trying to kind of adhere to?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, while we are on the subject, I think, companies may be looking to do social media screening for their prospective employees. I'm sure, it's probably used in other segments, investors, landlords, and what have you, for safety reasons as well. But do you think it would be a situation where the companies are kind of doing screening on themselves to see what is being talked about? Because, influencer is a new job today, which never existed. And I think some of the other things which you already talked about do you think it's going to become more of a mainstay and a huge requirement as the world becomes more flat or flatter with remote hiring and people, companies hiring people all across the globe, and they never get to see them except, perhaps on the screen. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have seen quite an influx of companies that not only are doing this from a pre-employment standpoint for vetting potential people, but also who they currently have on staff. What does that look like? I'll give an example without saying a name, but we recently had a company come to us and wanted us to do screening on their whole entire current staff as it pertains to using keywords about what was going on in Israel, about anti-Semitism, and making sure that their current work staff isn't posting out there whatever they deem to be riskful within those categories. So I think that you're going to start to find that not only is it going to be used for pre-employment, but also for your current workforce. So we have quite a few customers under our belt that are doing that now. I do think social media screening, I mean, it was deemed legal in 2011 by the FTC. So this isn't something that's extremely brand new. It's probably a little bit over a decade new, but you're finding more and more companies that I think are using social media screening to kind of get that full picture of the potential one employee you might be bringing on, whether you mentioned a little bit too, even if it's maybe an investor, maybe it's volunteers, maybe it's employees. You can kind of justify it in any market, in my opinion. Anybody that's really forward facing, you're seeing a lot right now in schools. Even in the UK, for example, they posted a regulation law about 18 months ago that anybody in a school system needed to get a social media background check, from the janitor all the way up to the head of the school. So you are starting to see those types of things moving closer to the US as well and taking more of a global approach. You're starting to see it in public sector, the concealed carry weapons. They're requiring social media checks on anybody that's applying for those. So you're starting to see different regulations come into place. The challenge with social media screening, as we all know, and if you're a CRA and you're trying to resell it, is it's not required. Whereas a criminal background check is required. So what is the value of a social media check? And really, let's get the complete picture on the individual.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I totally agree. I think I was talking to a crowdfunding site, and they were looking at, what kind of people are investing or coming in onto their platform. And
we do have quite a few investors that do that too. They want to know, okay, we're potentially going to invest some money, so I want to look at the people that are within that company, but also the company itself. I don't want to represent an organization that maybe on their employee corporate sites are posting things that we wouldn't agree with.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, so I think this is again back to numbers. Pretty astounding numbers here, and this was quite a shocker, if you will. So, what do you say to these numbers here, and how have they grown? Are they gonna continue to grow? Bigger and bigger?
I think they will continue to grow. I think it's pretty shocking to say 70% of employers are already looking at social media screening. And so the reality though is using a vendor, using a third party to do your social media screening creates a consistent process. But more importantly, as the employer, takes the bias off your shoulders. I think that, you know, if you're doing it ad hoc and going on Facebook and just searching, it's hard for you to, if you see something, to kind of take that out of your brain to try to make a decision on should we or should we not hire them. So I think creating a consistent process, I think having a third party vendor, and I think, like I said, most importantly, taking the bias off your shoulders is huge.
Yeah. Now I was surprised when I read this number about 57%, you know, of employers reported finding something that could have prevented them from hiring somebody. So, and I think this is probably going to keep, you know, going up as well. So, I think, you know, speaking of so many companies looking at it, so many employers, you know, getting aware, regulations changing again, as you just mentioned, in schools and colleges and universities. I mean, you know, and it's, you know, I think, let's face it, every now and then we have actually done our sort of individual version. Everybody perhaps has done that, which is you go onto Google and you type, you know, a person's name, or you go to LinkedIn and you know, start searching for somebody just to kind of get to know if you are going to be meeting with them, you know, for business reasons or otherwise. So you know, I think it's important to talk about, is it legal?
And I think it's human nature, right? Like you meet a new friend and all of a sudden you're like, well, let me check them out on Facebook to see who else they know. So I think that it's human nature to kind of look at those social media accounts. I think from a standpoint of employment, is it legal? Obviously, you do need to get consent to be able to follow FCRA, just like you would for any of the other background checks that you may or may not be doing. And you really need to create an internal social media policy. What does that look like for your organization, and or why is that important? It's hard to kind of make a decision about somebody if you don't have anything in writing as to what are kind of your big red flags within your organization. And every organization, it's different, which is why they should be personalized to the individual organization. And then obviously working with your social media background vendor and or however that works in terms of your background screening company, to make sure that you're getting or seeing or wanting to see what exactly would be your individual red flags. Again, what my risk factors are versus what Naveen's are, for example, could be completely different. And that's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
But that policy that you would have or recommend to your customer having is important. And I'll give you a brief example. We have a customer that, you know, they are primarily in the animal welfare. I'll just use that term, animal welfare. So their keywords are very different than the normal pre-employment vetting type of keywords to be used. For example, things like dogs, cats, any types of animals would be more of their keywords focused around, is Jamie, am I going to potentially hire Jamie and she's out there posting, I'm not a big fan of dogs, they're not really my favorite. Well, that
Right.
really, in the big everyday general scheme of things, no big deal, right? It's okay. Jamie's not allowed to not have dogs. If I'm applying to this organization that is in the animal welfare industry, maybe it might not be a good fit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you couldn't have, you know, put it more aptly, as in, if Jamie is applying, doesn't like cats and dogs, is applying at Ferretly, that's okay, because, you know, it doesn't matter. But if you're applying for a job at WAG Hotels, which is predominantly an industry, you know, focused on providing animal care, dog care, you know, it would be important for them to know. So, quick question, is the consent, is it different from the standard generic pre-employment consent? Do companies create, you know, a special consent for social media screening? Any thoughts
So
on
it's
that?
both. Yeah, so social media consent, there's no like strict guideline in terms of how you go about getting the consent, but we have organizations that are very, very vague and add social media screening to their general language of, you know, we may or may not be doing a criminal, a drug, a driving, and a social. I also have organizations that get really specific and they say, we're going to do a social media background check, and can you disclose your handles? And that's okay too. Applicants aren't required to give handles, but if companies want to ask for them, they can.
Got it. Okay. So I guess the three key takeaways for, you know, companies and for our audience here is, first, they have to make sure that your employment policy or your employee handbook has policies which talk clearly about what it is and what they may or may not do. And then, the rest is really just making sure the consent is there. It may or may not be, it may or may not need to be customized for social media screening. And then lastly, I think, is to work with the CRA or a background screening provider. So they can, they're a neutral party, if you will. So, okay, that was very helpful. Thank you.
We
You know,
kind of
we
touched
talked a
upon this in
lot
the
about
beginning. Yeah, we touched upon this a little bit in the
Right.
beginning. The 7 major platforms that we're looking at: Facebook, Instagram. God, I so bad want to say Twitter, X, LinkedIn, TikTok, Reddit, and Pinterest. And then we also do a web and news search based on Google as well.
Yeah. No, thank you. Speaking of X versus Twitter, it sounds very strange to say I was tweeting on X as opposed
I know.
to. So,
I need
but
to
then
come up with different, I don't know what you'd call it. I was
With that-
Xing on X, or I'm not real
X.
sure, but
yeah. So, okay. So what is the Ferretly platform all about?
yep. So we're using artificial intelligence, AI, but we are also, we have human analysts in the loop. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I think it's important for you to know that we're not using robots, or we have a 3-step process. So identity resolution is kind of step 1. And that is where our analyst team is involved. We do need some property information from customers, things like obviously name, and this is all public information. So name, address, things like education, employment, those things are helpful for us in order to find social media handles. So our analyst team does the IR process. Then our report is run through our AI and our machine learning mechanisms to pick up on the different risk classifiers that we have set into our system. But again, also you can also use keywords and you can change those up. So that whole settings section of Ferretly is fluid. And then our analysts come back into the loop once the report is done and make sure there's not any false positives from the AI, or if there's specific instructions for the organization that we're working with. For example, nudity photos, you still may want them to be flagged, but you may not want the full front on nude photo within your report. We can redact those images. So things like that.
Well, that's good to know. So it's not just AI. There are people, real humans behind all the, maybe the searching and the reporting as well. So
I think it's
Uh,
important with social media screening to have actual eyes on reports as well as handles, just because the nature of the business.
yeah. Now, I think at Credify, we also tell people we use something called our platform and our services based on augmented intelligence, and it's in AI, but it's artificial intelligence plus human intelligence, because AI in itself, can spit out things which could be, which may not be relevant, may not be accurate. Frankly, it could be very dangerous. It could harm somebody's potential. So, a little more about the platform, perhaps a report, the output.
Yep. So we do provide, obviously, like I said, the identity resolution. So we do lay out in our reports kind of the different handles. It is a PDF report, so you can hyperlink any of that. And then from there, we do provide some analytical insights if you want to include it. So things like, where were those flag posts flagged? What categories? How many? We give you a word cloud. What words are they using the most? We do, like I said, produce the report in a PDF. You do have the ability to customize that within settings in terms of what the output is. But what you're really trying to see within that report, which we do deliver every post that was flagged based on those risk classifiers. So that's what you're trying to look for and trying to see kind of where are the red flags or potential red flags that you might see within your organization.
Perfect. So if one of my clients wants to do this, then we would normally ask them, okay, what kind of, words do you want to use for red flags? What could be the best settings, optimal settings? And on that front, some of the clients may or may not even be aware. So can Ferretly help with that and say, here are
Sure.
typical flags you should use based on the industry? And then,
So of course, yeah, and keywords are all customized per customer. So we don't have kind of generic lists just because they are very different. Our 13 risk classifiers that are built into the system, which you can kind of see at the top of the slide, things like profanity, things like drug images, bullying, those types of things. Those are going to get flagged regardless. So keywords are used if you think that there's something very specific, kind of like the example we used a couple minutes ago, the word dog. That's not going to get flagged in the normal risk classifiers. Now it might get flagged if your subject was saying, I hate effing dogs and used a cuss word in there, then that would get flagged maybe for profanity. But the word dog wouldn't get flagged, for example, unless you had a specific keyword. So Ferretly definitely can help you or help your, on behalf of your CRA, kind of come up with some generic kind of keywords that may be important. But really, it's important for you, if you are a CRA, to understand from your customer, what is it they're looking for? Kind of what is their ticking points? What is it that they need to see that would be different than maybe what I need to see? And in all honesty, some
it.
customers don't use keywords at all. The 13 risk classifiers that are built into the platform is enough for them.
That's-
So it's an option. We just like to be able to give the keyword option if you need it to be a little bit more thorough in terms of what you're looking for.
right. Right. No, thank you. And just finally on the report, which is really the product or the output and perhaps the most valuable thing which a client would get. What is it that they should be looking at? And I'm asking that in the sense of a comparison between sort of a criminal search or a criminal screening where, people are able to get information about a specific case or, which was either disposed or dismissed or, there were charges in a certain time frame. And there is, what is technically called an adjudication based on the severity of a charge. So for clients, what should be they looking for in the report, just to kind of help them out with this purpose?
Yeah, so I would go back again and say, again, what is it they're looking for? So those 13 risk classifiers, obviously, if there was any flag post within those flag posts would show up on the report. So obviously you can see those in full. You can also, from the report itself, go directly out to the post as well on the corresponding platform. And then keywords, I think if you do kind of, it sounds like what you're asking is kind of the detail in terms of, that's where I would say keywords I would rely heavily on. If they're looking for very specific things, then I'd want to make sure that keyword section is filled out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a sample report which you had shared. Maybe at the end of the slide, we can show it, or if people request, we can email it to them as well.
Yeah.
So I think we just moving on quickly, so we can, wrap this up and leave some time for Q&A. Maybe good time to talk about who does it, and I think we will segue into, some client examples also, but it's important for our customers to understand who are the people and who are the early adopters or people who are looking to kind of jump into it.
I think, in my opinion, you can justify social media screening to any type of vertical, any type of industry. Early on for us, we had a lot of interest with social media screening in the professional sports world, as well as college athletic. A lot of the D1 schools in the South were doing this and vetting, or still are vetting their potential recruits, vetting their staff, vetting their coaches, to make sure that one, I'm sure all of you guys are aware, college football is a big, big deal. And it's also a big,
Yeah.
big moneymaker.
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys too, to be honest, there's two ways to approach it when it comes to sports. Is one, they're representing the brand, and two, it's also an opportunity for education. A lot of these guys want or think that they're going to go pro. So you can't have their normal lingo that they're saying on social media stay there and be potentially found 5 years from now as you're potentially going to be a role model if you're going to pro. So a lot of staff use that from an educational standpoint as well. So we've had huge success there. We've had huge success, as I mentioned, in social media influencers. We're finding that people are using this in banks, financial institutions are more from a pre-employment standpoint. We're also seeing this a lot in what I would call the entertainment umbrella. Look at reality TV. Everybody's addicted to it. we do a lot of vetting for reality TV. Those, you know, they are free formed on social media screening on what they say. So that's
Yep.
important as well. And then of course, public sector, that's something that shouldn't be forgotten. We're seeing a lot of that within law enforcement. We're seeing a lot of that in even law enforcement within universities as well. We've done a lot of vetting with volunteers, churches, archdioceses, so schools, public schools, as well as even independently schools as well. So I think that,
Yep.
well, I don't think I know, because I've been doing this for 5 years now, is that I've kind of seen this through every vertical. And just when you think you've covered that one vertical, you're like, oh, that's a good use case for that one too. So I'm happy to kind of talk about how you would kind of talk to these individual types of organizations and tailor it a little bit different in terms of a use case.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it's becoming, if not already, but it's going to become more and more pervasive, and pretty much everybody is going to be looking at this. So, you know, speaking of that, I think this is one of your clients. It's a testimonial. So,
Yep.
anything particular you want to share?
No, I
Something
think
to
what's
highlight,
nice about
perhaps?
this one is this is for a pre-employment vetting process, but Decorating Den is a franchise organization. So they've been able to roll this out through their different franchises and kind of create a consistent process there. So I think it's important to know, I'm sure many of you have customers that maybe are franchises to hotels, restaurants, those types of things. So I think it's important to kind of have a unified approach throughout the whole brand.
Got it. No, this is great. And you know, we have an example of a client. This was in a retail, you know, industry, one of the very large clients. And for them, it was a lot of remote hiring around the globe during, I would say, during COVID, and it continued post-COVID as well in 22, 23 last year. And I think they came to us, and there was an integration which we did with Ferretly in under 4 weeks, give or take. And then you know, we were able to deliver that, and I think it was very helpful. They were really just doing it predominantly to, you know, look at the culture fit and make sure that these remote employees are still, you know, kind of fit to the culture. There is some cohesiveness and team building and so on and so forth. So another one of your clients.
Yeah, this is a great example of one of my customers that kind of started out really small with us, and now they're one of our bigger customers, but they fall into that entertainment umbrella. So they use social media screening to vet cast members, potential people for commercials, potential people for different social media campaigns on behalf of their customers or the different brands they represent. They have some reality TV stars as well that they do vetting for, and then some movies as well. So casting for different movies. So again, you can see it for different use cases.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that gives everybody a good idea of, you know, what kind of use cases are out there, and they are changing and expanding every day. You know, that now we come to the, you know, the $1 million question of, you know, how much does it cost? How long does it take? And so on. So it would be helpful to our audience here if we can give them some insights into, you know, how do they go about it? How do they get started?
Yep. So getting started, I'll put that back on you and say, if you have any specific questions that you want to address with Credify, that's great. You can always talk to me as well. I'm happy to do that. We do like to have our reports back within 48 hours. It's a pretty seamless process. We do integrate as well with places like TazWorks, Oshio. We have a RESTful API as well, which is what Credify used as well. So you can use it through your own user interface. Our pricing is 100% based on volume. So we charge essentially for just reports. We don't charge for training, onboardings, integrations, any of those types of things. So pricing can vary, but and it also depends, you know, if you're a reseller, if you go direct, those types of things. So happy to kind of talk about pricing offline, but in general, pricing for a social media check should be around $30 to $35.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then like you can, like the last two bullets, if you want to do integrations with Credify, or you can go to Credify Direct as well.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. As you rightly said, the pricing is roughly in the $30, $35, $40 range. If you're doing one-off, if you're doing more, then things can be slightly different. So this was very helpful. I think we are at the end of we are almost at the clock here, perhaps a little bit over. But thank you again for sharing your insights. We will now open it up to Q&A. If there is anybody who wants to ask any questions, you can unmute yourself and fire away.
Hi, Naveen. Hey, Jatin this side.
Hi, Jatin.
Hey, so I have a very quick question regarding this. Suppose I think there are two type of people. Okay, one are very uh, introvert when it comes to social media. They just scroll down, watch videos, go through different posts, but they don't post much directly. They are just most of the time readers on the social media.
Yeah.
And then there are people who post a lot. They are very aggressive on the social media. So when we do a social media check, I know that it's very easy to find out these people who are very aggressive on the social media. But there are people who are not posting anything, but they might be liking those content. Okay.
Reacting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, or sending reactions, or maybe sharing it in single emails or through different posts. Like I'm sharing a reel on Instagram through my WhatsApp with my friends. So I'm not posting it anywhere. But so will this kind of thing can be covered? Because I have seen this, that there are people, because when the presentation started, I had these questions, but during that, most of the questions which I had in my mind were answered. The cultural fit is a thing, actually. There are people who are technically, I'm into IT staffing. There are people who are technically really well. But I have sometimes there have been some issues that those people weren't actually culturally fit.
Yeah.
And
You're
if
not necessarily a good fit
this
for the
could be a
thing.
case, so will it be covering that kind of aspect?
Jamie,
You want me to jump in?
yeah.
So our report, we look at the subject's original post, of course. We look at their likes, their replies, and their repost as well. So to answer your question, yes, it's covered. And I think it's important that it's covered for exactly what you just pointed out, is that they may not be engaged heavily on their side of the house. They may not be posting things, but they may be liking things. And we have actually had several instances of reports that have come back that most of the flagged posts on their report are not their original post. They are either things they're reposting, they're things they're liking, and that does shed some light in terms of what their character is and what is it that they're looking at, that they're interested in. So that, to answer your question, is absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Jamie, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So, now we are at a different portion. How long do we usually go back and check the social media post for the screening one? Because
For
we've
FCR,
we've
yep,
all
if you're
been
trying,
young and stupid at one point of time, and we might have just posted something.
Well, there's, closets for people everywhere, digital closets, if you will.
Yep.
so to follow FCRA guidelines, if you are following those, that's going to be 7 years of post history. Outside of the FCRA kind of circle of guidelines, you can choose your post history from 1 to 10 years within our platform, or you can keep it unclipped and it would go back from the thresholds of those different platforms. So we do have instances where some customers, for example, may say, I just want to see the last 3 years. So we can, that's just absolutely, it's a settings feature within our platform. But for FCRA, if that's what you're following, which 90% of people are, it's going to be your max that you can go back is 7 years of post history. So we're in
Perfect. And even if
2024.
somebody-
So what is that? 2017?
17, yeah.
Yeah.
Even if somebody wants 10 years, do you think you can go back? We had a client there for criminal searches. They insisted on a 10-year search.
Was it an FCRA client or not?
FCRA Financial Services.
Yeah, you're technically from a Fair Credit Reporting Act, not supposed to do more than 7 years of post history. Now, is that to say within our platform you can't? No, you can. I mean, I'm assuming
Yeah.
and taking the grace that you're doing the right thing on your side of the house, but if you want to go back more than that, that's obviously your choice.
Okay. No, that's helpful. I have another question, Jamie. I think,
Sure.
while we are waiting and somebody in the audience may have, we talk about this as pre-employment screening. I think, based on your experience, can you perhaps, you have some clients who do this when they are even looking at pre-employment? Technically, FCRA means you made an offer, you've identified the person, and then you're doing the screening with the consent. Is there a situation where there are people who may want to screen candidates, as in they have 4 candidates for a job they are interviewing or 4 applications? Can they do it at that time
Yes.
with the consent?
Yes. Yep, we have tons of organizations that are doing that too. They might have a position for, name the position, manager of ABC. Well,
Right.
there might be 10 people that apply and we've narrowed it down to, we think these 5 are decent. Let's do a social media background check on them first, see if that weeds anybody out in terms of that, and then go to the next round. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they would still do it with consent and so on, right?
Yep.
So, okay. So just to kind of talk about the timing. All right. And then there are clients who will, I think you mentioned, who are doing this on an ongoing basis. I would perhaps draw a parallel to a drug testing, a random. So maybe 6 months
We
into
do
the
have the
job.
ability to do continuous screening. You choose your frequency on the minimum of a monthly level. So if
Yeah.
you wanted to run a report on Jamie Franco's and then run a report on me every month for the next, say, 12 months, you can
Yeah.
absolutely do that to see if there's flag posts that have surfaces. So a lot of companies will do that for, they might hire me and then they want to monitor me the first year.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions from the audience? Otherwise, I think we are on time here, a little bit over. We'd like to keep it to 40 minutes, but happy to answer any last couple of questions if there's anybody. Okay. I think, this is, we'd wrap this up now. Thank you, Jamie, for your support, for getting this done. I'm sure it's very helpful. And I'm assuming hopefully we will have more inquiries and more customers or prospects follow up, and we'll be in touch. But thank you
Sounds
again
good.
for the time.
And if
And
anybody
thanks
has any
everybody
direct
for
questions, I'm
attending.
happy to answer those as well.
Awesome.
Feel free to email me.
Feel free to reach out to any one of us. You have the contact information here. And thank you everybody for your time, and thanks for attending. Have a good day, good evening, and we'll be in touch soon until a couple of months from now on the next topic, something new and different again. So thanks again. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks
Bye.
a lot, Jamie,
Thank
and
you.
thanks
Bye-bye.
everyone for joining.
Bye.